Hello, legit KidLit viewers, and welcome back for another episode. Today we welcome a middle grade debut author, Thushanthi Ponweera, and her book is I Am Kavi, which is just a beautiful novel in verse set in Sri Lanka. And we are so excited to have you here.
Hi Alexis and Tiffany. My name is Thushanthi Ponweera. I am an author from Sri Lanka, and this is I Am Kavi, my middle grade novel in verse, which is also a historical fiction. That's quite a mouthful, isn't it? Anyway, it comes out September 19th from Holiday House. It's my debut novel, which I wrote during the pandemic, and I'm pretty proud of it and really excited for the launch and sharing it with the readers. It follows 10-year-old Kavi who wins a scholarship from her school. It's basically, she's from a village that borders the north and east, where the war was mostly taking place. So this exam and getting through it allows her to come to the city, Colombo, which is a far cry from where she grew up. And it follows her journey on how she adjusts to this new life, and there's a whole lot of backstory that you'll find out when you read the book, like her mother, her relationship with her mother, who's got remarried, and Kavi hates her stepfather, and she thinks that this exam is a way out for her mother and her to get away from their circumstances. They're pretty poor and life is a struggle for them, but then she finds out that the mother is pregnant with a new baby, and Kavi feels very unwanted, and she thinks that, okay, I'm going to reinvent myself. I don't need them. I'm going to go to the city and make a life for myself, and her plans kind of fall apart. So the story, it basically follows her journey.
Describe your book as a haiku.
Oh, I love haiku. It was the first and I think the only poetry form we learned at school. I was a teenager. It wasn't even a part of the syllabus, but our English teacher back then, she did it as a fun exercise, and it's stuck with me ever since. So I'm really happy about this question. So here we go. Kavi has a chance at a new... Oh, I keep getting it wrong, sorry. Kavi has a chance to leave behind her old life. She wants to, she does.
Tell us about the setting of your book.
So the 1990s, specifically 1997 is when the book starts. Kavi is 10 years old, and the book ends in 1998 when she's 11. I personally was around 12, I think, or 11, 12, around that time, at that age. And back then we didn't have Netflix, we didn't have a chance to watch pre-recorded TV, so the entire family would most definitely sit together for the news at night. And although I was in Colombo, so Colombo is in the southwest part of the country, which was relatively, we led relatively normal lives, but the north and east, where most of the war was happening, was a different story altogether. But every night, every day, even as a child, I was exposed to what was happening, or at least the news that was given to us through the main media. So if you take my life, I had a pretty happy childhood, a pretty normal childhood, but now when I think about it, like the news that we grew up listening to, mainly in the 90s, was pretty horrific actually. So towards the latter part of the 90s, the main presidential candidate was assassinated. Then there was a president who was assassinated. And then another president who lost an eye in an assassination attempt. So all this was like, oh, look, he's dead. Oh no, you get the sense of seriousness and gravity from the adults, but then you actually also kind of put it to the back of your mind because you're more involved in like day-to-day life as a child, and it was a privilege actually to be able to separate that bad news from life as we know it. So I knew there was a war going on. It was pretty bad in the 90s, I would say. But also, the 90s was also a time when Sri Lanka won the World Cup, the Cricket World Cup. So cricket is a very important sport in Sri Lanka. 1996 was when our team as the underdogs won the World Cup. And that, I think, is a memory that all 90s kids can remember as a very happy moment in our lives. But now that I look back on it, I think there's a lot that was happening that was normalized that shouldn't have been normalized. And as an adult, it's a lot to unpack. So I think I sort of make a start with this book, and let's see where it ends up.
The cover of your book is gorgeous. Tell us about that experience and when you first saw it.
I agree, the cover of the book is gorgeous, and it's been getting a lot of attention, good attention, and people are always commenting on how great the cover is, which my editor predicted, and I'm really thankful for the team at Holiday House for selecting this artist. Her name is Emily Niwa. She's a Japanese-Australian artist who lives in Australia. And there we go, without the reflection. And I think she's perfectly captured Kavi. I mean, her looks, her personality. I didn't have much feedback to give at all. I mean, there was some feedback, which has gone into its own blog post on my website. It's pretty interesting if you want to give it a read. It wasn't a direct yes. There was something, especially about the jacket, so you can read up on it. But I'm really so glad how it turned out, and I'm thankful to my editor for convincing me that this was the cover to go with. Look at her, she looks so scared but very determined, and that's exactly, I mean, Kavi's character in a nutshell. And yeah, I personally would always pick books. I judge them by the cover. So I was thinking, if I didn't write this book, I would still pick it up. So that makes the cover a success in my eyes.
What are 5 things that make you you?
Number 1, I love rainy weather, like especially the gloomy, cool weather that follows a proper rain shower. I love the sound of rain. I'm the happiest when it rains, and Sri Lanka has the best type of rain, like the rain showers, the thunderstorms, very dramatic and very soothing to my soul. Number 2, I'm a very impatient person. It makes life really hard as a parent, and being on sub for the first time nearly broke me. Number 3 would be I always have like multiple conversation threads running in my head, and this is really confusing to the person I'm talking to, because suddenly I'll switch from one topic to the other. So yeah, but I can keep perfect track of it, so I'm fine with it. But I think for the other person, not so much. I love baking, but I do not like cooking, because it's a lot of cleaning up. And in baking, at least, what you get out of it is yummy. So I prefer baking and the science of baking, and knowing that you can put these things and get this exact result. I love the specificity of it. And the last thing that makes me me would be I love my afternoon naps. Yep, I really do. So I'm glad I'm a writer. I get to give myself a lot of permission to have my afternoon nap.
Your book touches on the Sri Lankan Civil War, but also middle school life. So we want to know, what is one of your favorite middle school memories?
So I know this is not typically middle school, it is quite dorky, but I know my fellow writers and book lovers will get it. But one of my favorite middle school memories was okay, little bit of context here. So Sri Lanka we don't really have the massive libraries full of English books. There is the public library with a lot of Sinhala books, but I prefer reading in English, and our school had a tiny library, which was normal for most schools, and there was never enough books to read. Buying them was expensive, although my parents would reward me with books every time I needed a reward, it would be a book reward. So basically in middle school we had this whole circle of friends who love to read, and we would take turns, we decide, okay, you buy that book and I'll tell my mother to buy this book, and then we can swap. So we had this really a very complicated but organized way of book swapping. There would be lists and timelines and deadlines and a pecking order of who gets what when, depending, like you give me 2 books and then I give you 2 books, and then if you're really good friends you wouldn't need a swap, like it won't be a barter, but more like, okay, it's okay, you don't have to give me a book, here you can read this. And, we were very serious about it, and I really look forward to finishing the book I had got and swapping it for the next one. So yeah, that's my best middle grade memory, if you can believe it.
What is one of the worst or most embarrassing moments from middle school?
My most embarrassing memory as a middle grader. So I didn't get embarrassed easily as a kid. I think it's far worse as an adult. So I was a pretty naive, I would say, naively confident middle schooler. But there was this particular memory that is hilarious. 11 years old, middle school, 11, 12, 13 would be around the time that girls would attain puberty. And I was in an all-girls school, but it was something we never spoke about with our friend. It was called growing up. And I think 11 was like the younger side of things. And I remember I would always get picked on by the teachers because I would be yapping in class and I would be asked to stand up and change seats and all that. So one day the teacher makes me stand up and she gets really angry and annoyed with me, and she's like, blah blah blah, you're always disturbing your friend, you're not letting her study, and why are you talking during my lesson, and just because you grew up during the holidays, don't think that you're special or anything. And I was just staring at her because I hadn't reached that point, and I was really confused and mortified almost, and I was like, Miss, no, I haven't really grown up. And then she thinks about it, she was taken aback, and she thinks about it. She's like, oh yeah, that wasn't you, that was Nimmi. And all eyes turned to my best friend Nimmi, who wants to, I think, dig a hole and die because she hadn't told anyone either. So that was more than, I think, embarrassing for me. It was embarrassing for her, but it was funny. Yeah. So that's one memory I have from that time.
Do you have any writing quirks?
One of my writing quirks is that when I'm properly in writing mode and revising mode, I drink a lot of tea. I cannot munch, I'm usually a foodie and I would love to snack, but when I'm writing, seriously, no, it's just tea with milk and sugar, which is how we drink it, how most Sri Lankans like to drink it. At least, well, let me speak for myself. I like to drink it that way. Most Sri Lankans like to drink it plain with sugar. But yeah, so revising, maybe I wouldn't have eaten the whole day, but I would have had about 5 mugs of my milk tea.
What advice do you have for young writers who would like to start writing poetry?
If you love poetry, if you think you want to try it out, just do it. It doesn't matter how old or young you are. Have a notebook. No one has to see it but you, and just keep writing. And when I look back now, I saved all my notebooks from my childhood. So I think a lot of it was very emo, but almost all of it was free verse. So I don't think I really ever wrote rhyming poetry, though it was what I knew as poetry at the time. What we learned as poetry mostly was rhyming poetry. But most of it was very emo. It compared life to a lot of things, so now I see it as my writing style or poetry style be mostly free verse and metaphors, but there are lots of my writing friends who are so talented in writing limericks and rhyming picture books and rhyming poetry. They're very good at it. So I think it's only by writing that you'll figure out your style, and poetry is something that I personally turn to when I'm feeling conflicted about things. happening around me or to me. So yeah, just write, and as you get older, if you want to take it further, start sharing it. Maybe preferably with like-minded people. So if you can find your poetry communities online, on Twitter, on whatever social media platforms you're on, go for it, and take it from there. But just have confidence in your skills and see what makes you happy. Does it make you happy when you write poetry? So then that's something you should pursue.
Thushanthi, we have had such a great time with you today, and we hope all of our viewers are inspired to write and to also pick up your new book, I Am Kavi. Thank you.
Okay, so thank you so much for having me, for giving me the flexibility to record this in my own time. I really appreciate it, and I really enjoy what you all do with your channel, Alexis and Tiffany, and I hope your viewers enjoyed listening to me, learning about me, and yes, my book, I Am Kavi, here it is again. Middle grade verse novel, comes out September 19th, 2023, and it's hard for me to do much marketing and in-person events, obviously, from thousands of miles away. So I would really appreciate it if you could request it on NetGalley, leave a review, request it from your library, ask your local bookstore to order it, or pre-order it yourself as a gift for yourself or the children in your life. Yeah, that would really, I would really appreciate that. And it started raining, and let me show you. Yeah, that's gloomy, rainy weather outside my window, and I love it.